And, hi. So, if you don't know, this is a Wattpad fanfiction. It's great. It's called To the Moon, Drarry by, I do not know how to pronounce it. I do have, all this information in the description. I do not have a link to the story. I might try and get one, but for like the final one, I probably will link it if I figure out how to. So I currently am trying to get onto Wattpad on my computer because I normally read it on my phone. And the reason why I'm kind of explaining myself here, I haven't updated this in a while, is because a lot's been going on recently in my life. It's been a little hectic this month. I've been ignoring basically most of my things just to try and catch up on schoolwork. I haven't really been out of the house in a little bit. I went to my one friend's house the other day. It's now March. I think the last time I updated this story was back in February, the 12th or something. And so I deeply apologize for that. I don't know if anybody is when's the next chapter coming out? Did you forget? I did not forget. I mean, I kind of did, but it's kind of always been in the back of my mind because I haven't finished it. But it is called To the Moon, Drarry by BarihaZahra, I believe. It's great. So far, if you wanna go, I think I have a playlist. I don't think I haven't updated it completely yet, but I do have a playlist of the readings. And if you do have any other stories you would like for me to read, it can be almost any kind of fandom. Except the main fandoms I'm in are I'm only in a couple fandoms. Harry Potter is definitely one of them. So if you have any Harry Potter stories or Harry Potter fan fictions you would like for me to read, I will most likely read them. Especially if it's Wolfstar, because then A+, man. A+. Alright, so we're gonna get back into this. I also found out I did not have this saved in my library. You can do that, and so I haven't been able to see it, so that's why I haven't gotten into it. Alright. Chapter 4, July 28th. Draco sighed and buried his face in Poppet's warm fur. He'd watched sadly all mornings as Harry drew further and further away from him. Oh, Harry didn't mean to. He couldn't help it. He was having visitors today, and Harry had waited anxiously for this day since he'd gotten their owl nearly a week ago. Vincent Gregg had told Draco that the people coming over were Harry's very best friends, Ron and Hermione, and that Draco had better be prepared for a bit of time away from his guardian, as Harry's best friends couldn't stand Vincent Gregg or the teenaged Draco. Draco was a bit confused as Vincent Gregg refused to go any further on why these two people, who had meant so much to Harry, hated him so much. He eventually asked Uncle Severus one afternoon. As he was watching him, Severus just looked sadly at him. Okay, reader speaking for a moment. I'm sorry to cut, and again, you're probably very annoyed with me. I apologize. I do want to say, because it's been a while since I've read these, out loud at least, I don't remember how I did their accents, and I don't know if I can do that, but I can definitely try. They just might sound completely off and terrible from what I had last time. I did have to re-watch the last one. I just skipped to the end so I knew where I was at. That way I could pick it back up. And so if the accents are bad, or like it's completely different from what it was last time, I do deeply apologize, because I used to like read them back to back to back to back and just post them whenever. But yeah, I don't have any saved because my phone actually did like a restart and I lost all that to like all of it except like stuff in September and from when I got my phone. So yeah, that's why pictures aren't going to be the same again. So I apologize for that. Anyway, so yeah, I just wanted to let you know about that. Alright, and back to the story. Draco, you have to understand, child. You are very different as a teenager. The older man attempted an explanation. You and the Gryffindors are just cut from the same cloth. You both had trouble seeing eye to eye. Draco had nodded because his uncle's eyes were beginning to dart around the room and his hands began to fidget. Most people would have thought Draco wouldn't notice. He spent too much time eyeing his parents for just those reactions not to notice. However, when noticing an eye twitch could save you from being backhanded across the room, one learned quickly. And so Draco still had no idea why these two people hated him, nor why he was going to lose his Harry for as long as they were there. He sighed again and let Poppet's soothing purr distract him from his impending loss. At precisely 11:45, Harry ushered everyone out into the great hall for lunch, where he was to meet Ron and Hermione. He was so excited he could hardly hold it in. Too excited to notice the long faces that not only Draco, but also Grey Condens wore as well. Snape watched his house students sadly. Now was as good as a time as any. He supposed to have let them learn that a friendship made in the heat of the moment rarely lasted. As the great hall clock chimed noon, the great hall doors burst open. Harry jumped up from his seat to greet his grinning compatriots. I don't think that's right. Compatriots. I'm gonna say it. Compatriots. The three-way hug was bone-crunching in its intensity, and Draco slouched a bit more as he saw how happy Harry looked to be holding on to his friends. Harry herded Ron and Hermione up to the table and gestured them to sit across from Vince and Greg. They hesitated as they approached, glancing at Harry in confusion. Harry, oblivious in his delight, just plopped down next to Draco, dropping a kiss on his head. As he did so, when he looked up, he was surprised to see the two Gryffindors still standing. He frowned. What's wrong? What? Oof, Hermione. Nothing, Harry. Nothing at all. Hermione smiled winningly and sat, glaring at Ron, until he took his place at her side. How has your summer been? She attempted. Ron just glared sullenly across the table. Harry stared in confusion from Hermione's overly bright smile to Ron's dull anger. What's wrong? He demanded again. Hermione shot a telling glance at the Slytherins before shrugging. It's nothing, really. Harry followed her gaze. I do this every time. Harry followed her gaze, and his eyes narrowed. I say, he said coldly. He then sighed. Hermione, Ron, I love you both to distraction. You know that. He waited for nods from both of them. Hermione folded her hands and tried to focus on Harry's words. Ron just continued glaring at Vince and Greg, who were, for one, not even looking at the Gryffindor. For once, not even looking at the Gryffindor. Things have happened this summer, he said softly. Things that have changed me. That have changed the way I feel. The way I think. I don't have the right to tell you most of it. It isn't my story to tell. But what I can tell you is that I found good friends somewhere I hadn't previously thought to look. Hermione's eyes shot to the Slytherins, immediately searching for whatever Harry saw in them. Ron's eyes just widened. What? He blustered. Friends with Slytherins. Harry sat back in his chair, and his gaze chilly as he took in his best friend. No, he returned, but I have made friends with Vince and Greg. I'd like to introduce you, if I may. Ron opened his mouth to retort, and all that came out was a hiss of air as Hermione elbowed him under the table. The Slytherins barely managed to keep from smirking. We'd like that, Harry, Hermione said softly. Greg smiled at the girl. What? Greg? Harry smiled at the girl. He knew she'd understand. Hermione, this is Greg. Greg, this is my dear friend Hermione. He didn't know who was more shocked, Hermione or himself, when Greg reached his hand across the table and held it steadily in front of the Gryffindor girl. Nice to meet you, Hermione, he said gruffly. She gingerly took his hand and allowed him to shake it briefly. As she pulled away, she smiled. It's nice to finally meet you as well, Greg, she said gently. Harry's face was near to bursting. And this is Vince Hermione. Vince offered his own hand with a shy smile. Hi, was all he managed. Hello, Vince. Hermione returned the smile. Harry turned hesitantly towards Ron. The red-headed boy had his face planted in his hands. Ron? He asked carefully. Ron pulled his hands away and looked at Harry with a resigned expression. You're not budging on this, are you? He asked wearily. Harry shook his head. Ron sighed. Fine, I'm Ron. He stuck his hand out at Greg, as though he were waiting to get it ripped off. Greg took it with a smirk. Ron, he nodded. Greg shook and moved his hand in front of it. Vince glanced at Greg momentarily and then took the Gryffindor's hand as well. Another brief shake and everyone was in their seats again. Harry beamed at his friends, both new and old. Then he glanced down, meeting Draco's big eyes. And this... Oh, sorry. On this, Harry lifted Draco into his lap. Puppet and all. This is Draco, he said proudly. Draco, love, this is Hermione and Ron. Draco looked at them carefully, trying to see if he could tell anything just by the way they looked at him. Ron grinned. That's Malfoy. He laughed. Draco could feel something in the way Ron said his last name. He couldn't put his finger on it, but it made him cringe. Into Harry's arms, nonetheless. That made Harry frown. What's wrong, Poppet? "What's wrong, Poppet?" he whispered. Draco shook his head and bit his lip, trying not to cry at the table like a big baby. Harry cuddled Draco into his embrace and shot a pissed-off look across the table. "I don't know what the hell you did wrong," he snapped, "but you better apologize or get the hell out." Ron stared in astonishment as Harry's illuminant? Well, he stumbled to stop, reading Harry's eyes, and that if Harry refused to bulge on the Vince and Greg issue, that he was cast in iron on the Draco issue. "I don't know what I did," he shrugged helplessly. "What? I'm sorry, Draco, if I made you upset." Draco peered up at him from the shielding of Harry's arms. His eyes sad and confused. "You don't like me," he said softly. Harry's gaze became murderous, and Ron rushed to placate the little boy. "But silly Draco," he chuckled nervously. "I just met you." Draco shook his head. "No, the grown-up me. They all said you hated me." Harry frowned. "Oops. Who said love?" "Vince and Greg and Uncle Severus," Draco whispered. "They all said you couldn't stand me, that we were too different to like each other." Ron deflated slightly as Harry turned the death glare on the Slytherins. He was rather pleased to find they weren't immune to the effects of Harry's anger either. Greg's eyes darted away, and Vince turned pale. "Did they now?" Marcy, it's okay, wake up. You guys make life so difficult for me, huh? He was rather pleased to see that they weren't immune to the effects of Harry's anger either. Greg's eyes darted away, and Vince turned pale. "Did they now?" Harry bit out. We were just trying to explain to him why you might not be around as much when Granger and Weasley came back." Greg defended them. If Harry were angrier before, he was furious at that. "You expected me just to drop Draco as soon as my old friends walked through the door?" he demanded, incredulously. Meekly, they nodded. However, when Draco nodded as well, Harry melted. "Oh, baby." Sorry. "Oh, baby." He stroked Draco's hair. No, I never leave you, not for anyone." He placed a gentle kiss on Draco's forehead, and he tilted his face up to meet Harry's. "I love you," he assured the boy. "I promise you, Poppet. I will never desert you. Sometimes I might get a bit distracted, and I can see how I might have been that way looking forward to Ron and Hermione coming to visit, but I never stop thinking about you, worrying about you, or loving you. So I never will, you have my word." Draco smiled at him, his lips still wobbly. They turned to face his rivals in Harry's affection. "Sorry," he murmured. "There's nothing to be sorry for, Draco." Hermione smiled softly. "I understand. Harry's a pretty special guy." She glanced at the man holding the small blonde and boy. when Harry loves you, when he's focused just on you, everything just seems right in the world, doesn't it? Draco was staring at Hermione in awe. He nodded. And when you look away even for a second, everything gets kind of scary. And you get frightened that maybe he won't look at you like that again, that he won't keep loving you. Draco was enraptured by Hermione's quiet words. Harry just gaped in astonishment, wondering what the hell she was talking about. And just when he thought he couldn't be any further stimmed, he saw Ron, Vince, and Greg nodding slightly in response to her words. She smiled gently. He will, Draco. He'll look again. He won't ever stop loving you. Once Harry loves, he loves forever. And eventually, you'll realize that when Harry looks away from you, he's not leaving you. Someone else is just getting their turn to feel as good as he makes you feel. Don't be afraid of that, Draco. Don't be afraid to share him. Because he'll always come back to you. And when he does, he will have brought others into your life. Others who will want to love you just as much as he does. Silence fell at the table, as everyone tried not to let their expressions indicate just how much Hermione's speech affected them. Finally, she just rolled her eyes at the older boys and leaned in closer to Draco. So, what's your Weasel's name again? She grinned. Draco blinked once, twice, and then his face bloomed into a smile that caused Hermione to catch her breath. "Her name is Poppet," he announced shyly. Hermione reached across the table and scratched the little needle's ear. "Hello, Poppet," she cooed. "Aren't you the prettiest little thing?" The Weasel purred happily as Hermione sat back down. Plates of food appeared in front of them. She began dishing herself up. "So, would you be interested in coming to Hogsmeade tomorrow, Draco? We could pick Poppet out a pretty collar." Draco's eyes got huge with excitement. Can I, Harry?" "Can I, Harry?" he begged. Harry grinned down at him and then smiled up at Hermione, blinking back the tears that suddenly sprang to his eyes. "I think that'd be just fine, love." Time skip. July 29th. Watching Hermione with Draco the next day, Harry decided it was much more than just fine. It was amazing. Harry realized that he had more likely taken over the father figure role in Draco's life. What he had not realized was that Draco was still missing something. Harry had tried to be everything Draco needed, but he came to the conclusion the next day, watching Hermione and the small boy together, that there are just some roles that only women can fill. Harry was feeling a tiny niggling of jealousy by the end of the day. Hermione had taken Draco to Hogsmeade earlier that morning, and according to the starry-eyed babble Draco subjected him to later that night, they'd seen and done everything imaginable in that town. Hermione showed me the candy store and we bought. Hermione took me to lunch and we ate. Hermione took me to the drugstore and got me. Hermione let me try on clothes like glad rags and I got. Hermione let me try sneakoscope at the magic store. Hermione bought me stuff to Hermione bought me stuff to learn to write from the clear store. Hermione wouldn't let me go into the bloody hog place. Bloody hog place. Hermione said the tea store was silly. Hermione showed me the Shrieking Shack. Harry just nodded and smiled brightly as Draco continued to extol the ventures of Harry's dear friend. Finally, Draco waved around the jeweled collar, resplendent with a sapphire-like stone that precious Hermione bought for Poppet. Then he wandered off in search of the bushy-haired Draco stealer in order to present the collar to Miss Poppet. Harry flung himself into the cushy armchair in the Slytherin dorm, where he decided to keep sleeping, and stared out into the fire. He felt a weight settle down into the arm of the chair, and he glared up at the offending body. Vince just smiled beatifically. What? Beatifically? Just smiled. Bentifully? Beatifically? Vince smiled beatifically down at him. Hey, Harry. He nodded. Was Harry's only reply. Feeling a bit out of sorts today, are you? Harry huffed a breath out and crossed his arms. If you would like to talk about something, you know I'm always here. Harry just shrugged. Something like how you're about to explode with jealousy if Hermione's name comes out of Draco's mouth one more time. Harry's head shot back around and stared into Vince's knowing eyes. You didn't. Vince shook his head. Why would I say something to either one of them? Why would I say something to either one of them? They aren't the ones with the problem. That would be you. Harry went back to glaring, only he had a slight martyred look to him now. Vince just rolled his eyes. Look, Potter, to contraire what you might have believed, Draco was our best friend. We spent 24/7 with him. We did everything together. We were inseparable. Harry began to flush, already knowing where Vince was heading with this. And over the last month, we've become like second cousins. Or maybe the annoying uncles that come over with a handful of galleons at a family reunion. He's transferred his affection over to you, and we're okay with that. I didn't mention it to make you upset or anything. He quickly reassured Harry. Sorry. I mean, that of all the people who might know how you're feeling right now, Ring and I really ain't. Harry sighed. I know, I'm sorry. I've just been hoarding his attention and affection. I know, and I feel like a bastard for it. He returned a pleading look into Vince, who just smiled gently at him. I said it was okay, Harry. He has different needs now than he did when he was 17. You're best suited to take care of them. If we didn't think so, we would have never agreed to put him with you. But maybe you weren't equipped to take care of all of those needs. Harry nodded, letting his head drop into the chair back. I was just thinking that. He breathed out heavily. He's not had a mum figure since he's been here. McGonagall isn't just one of those kinds to blow kisses and chocolate frogs, is she? Vince grinned and shook his head. I know that. Harry reiterated. I know it. I know that it's right, and I hate seeing him hold a hand, a hugging hand. Dear Merlin, Vin, I hate my best friend for a moment, he added in shame. Vince patted him on the shoulder. You know, all that crap Hermione sprouted at you, not being special and stuff during dinner. Harry smirked but nodded. Vince continued with a slight hint of pink in his cheeks. It's true, you know, but especially the bringing back of the people who could love you part. You do know that. He frowned, obviously searching for the right words. You looked at Draco, and you brought us back to him. When you did, you looked at us. I hate to admit it, because you're bloody Gryffindor, about this whole friend thing, but it hurt a bit when you looked away from us to Ron and Hermione. He couldn't or wouldn't meet Harry's eyes. Then I figured that you weren't looking away from us so much that as you were going back to looking at them for a bit, and I understood that they were your friends first. They needed you to have them. Look at them again. But the thing is, when you looked back at them, you brought us with you. And having them look at us too, well, it didn't take away the crop. The pain, if them looking at us too, well, it didn't take away the crop, the pain, if you will, of you not looking at us for the moment, but it did lessen it. It bit, because you gave us someone we could share with you. Someone we could share, bloody hell, share loving you with. He looked so disgusted at having to relate to fluffy Gryffindor emotions that Harry couldn't keep the giggle from escaping. He glared down at Harry, and then gave a returning smile. Yeah, piss off, Potter. What I'm trying to say is that you haven't lost Draco, you just give him and Hermione the opportunity to share their love of you with each other. I get it, Harry said with a soft smile. And thank you. Yeah, no problem, Vin shrugged, trying to make light of the whole conversation. Hey, Vin. Yeah. I love you too, he whispered with a snicker just before being pegged on the head with a decorative pillow. All right, he wheezed, pulling the pillow away from his head. All right, I give. Vince humphed and triumphantly and grinned at Harry. Harry looked at him thoughtfully, though. Harry looked thoughtfully at him. Vince's grin turned into a weary look. What? He demanded. I was just thinking. Harry cocked his head. Vince, would you let me tell you something without tearing my head off? I mean, really listen to what I have to say before you go off on me, he asked. Vince frowned. I suppose. Harry nodded. I think I know why you can't read. Vince tensed up immediately, his frown turning into a glare. Greg opened his freaking mouth, didn't he? He snarled. Harry held up a hand. Please, you promised. The Slytherin gritted his teeth and crossed his arms, but stayed on the couch. He was telling me some of your difficulties, and it sounded awful lot like a problem I've heard before. Vince just stared, his gaze icy. Harry sighed. Have you ever heard of dyslexia before? A brief shake of the head. Well, it's genuinely caught when kids are really young, but Greg tells me you were both taught at home till you attended Hogwarts. Yeah. Vince nodded, a bit less hostile. If neither one of your parents knew to look for it, they may not have caught it. Harry continued carefully, but I'm guessing that it's easily remedied in the wizarding world, because I've not heard of it being a big problem. Maybe you could ask Madame Pomfrey about it, he said hopefully. She might be able to fix it. Vince fidgeted. And I could read then? He asked far too nonchalantly. Harry nodded. I would think so, or at least you could learn to read the right way, and it wouldn't seem like some foreign language anymore. I see. Silence regained supreme. Yeah, maybe I will, Vince replied to the wall behind Harry. Harry smiled briefly. Let me know how it works out if you decide to go. Harry nodded. If I decide to go, he added, his voice full of bravado. More silence. Then Harry was hit upside the head again with another pillow. Another time skip. But I think we're going to leave this to the next video. So I hope you enjoyed. If you would like, you can subscribe or comment. Like I said earlier, you can comment what you would like for me to read if you like me reading. I'm sorry if you hear background noises. Especially with like a chair squeaking, I have rearranged my room, and that's another reason why I've been like so hectic. And so now I have to use a chair, and before I was just sitting on my bed. And I also have 2 guinea pigs who are like right next to where I record at. And I have a sleeping dog right behind me who keeps scratching at the bed. So yeah, I would like to apologize for any of the background noises that you may have heard. And yeah, so bye. Hope you enjoyed.